You call it empathy, but sometimes it's just disappearing. You've learned to read people's emotions like weather patterns, to sense the slightest shift in tone, the unspoken heaviness in a room, the quiet disappointment in someone's eyes. You call it caring, loving, understanding, but beneath it all is a quiet panic. The fear that if you don't hold everyone together, everything will fall apart. You learned to make yourself small so others could breathe easier. You became fluent in the language of other people's needs, but somewhere along the way, you forgot your own. It started quietly. Maybe it was a parent who only noticed you when you were helping. Maybe it was a home where peace depended on your silence. Maybe it was love that came with invisible strings, approval when you behaved, withdrawal when you didn't. So you learned early that safety wasn't found in being yourself, but in being useful. You became the fixer, the listener, the emotional anchor for everyone else. You learned to anticipate moods before they erupted. You grew up parentified, a child with the emotional burdens of an adult, learning that love meant caretaking, not being cared for. And so, you carried that lesson into adulthood. You fell in love with people who needed saving. You gave until you were hollow, mistaking exhaustion for intimacy. You confused overextending with devotion, thinking that if you just loved harder, you could make someone whole. You felt responsible for other people's healing, other people's moods, other people's chaos. It wasn't conscious, it just felt familiar. You mistook the anxiety of walking on eggshells for connection because that's what connection once was. You found comfort in imbalance because you didn't know what it felt like to exist without proving your worth. There's a particular ache that lives inside people who lose themselves in others. It's the ache of someone who has never been truly mirrored, who has been praised for their selflessness, but never seen in their fullness. You learned to disappear beautifully. You smiled through discomfort, said yes when you meant no, apologized for things that weren't your fault. You became a shapeshifter, gentle, adaptable, endlessly forgiving, because somewhere deep down, you believed that being easy to love was the only way not to be abandoned. But that kind of love always comes at a cost. You start noticing the fatigue first, how drained you feel after every conversation, how you walk away from people feeling smaller than before, how you constantly analyze what you could have said differently, what you might have done wrong. You think you're being kind, but really, you're negotiating your own worth. You don't know where you end and others begin. Boundaries feel like rejection. Independence feels like guilt. You call it empathy, but it's hypervigilance. You call it love, but it's fear of loss. And maybe part of you knows this. Maybe you've had moments where you caught yourself faking peace, smiling through resentment, staying in conversations that drain you. You tell yourself you're loyal, compassionate, patient, and you are. But beneath those virtues is an unspoken wound. You never learned that you are allowed to disappoint people and still be loved. You never learned that love doesn't have to mean sacrifice. Codependency isn't love. It's survival disguised as devotion. It's your nervous system wired to keep others regulated so you can feel safe. It's the child inside you who learned that the only way to avoid chaos was to control it, to fix, to soothe, to heal. But healing people is not the same as loving them. Fixing someone is not the same as being close. And when you live that way long enough, you begin to forget what it's like to exist without someone else's emotional gravity pulling you in every direction. You lose track of yourself. You forget your favorite music, your spontaneous impulses, the silence that once felt peaceful. You forget what it feels like to simply be without worrying who you need to become next. You confuse emptiness with peace, exhaustion with intimacy, self-sacrifice with strength. And yet, deep down, a quieter truth hums beneath all that noise. You are tired. Tired of carrying other people's storms, tired of shrinking so they can shine, tired of mistaking caretaking for love. Healing from this isn't about swinging to the other extreme. It's not about becoming cold, detached, or selfish. It's about remembering that your needs are not a burden. It's about realizing that empathy without one's boundaries isn't compassion. It's self-erasure. Healing means learning to pause before you absorb someone's pain, to notice the instinct that wants to fix everything, and to gently remind yourself, that's not mine to carry. It's learning to sit in discomfort when others are disappointed, and still know that you're safe. It's reclaiming your inner child, the one who thought love had to be earned through caretaking, and showing them that they can rest now. You'll notice healing in the quiet moments first. The first time you say no without explaining yourself. The first time you let someone be upset without rushing to mend it. The first time you feel peace in solitude rather than panic. At first, it feels selfish. It feels foreign. But slowly, your nervous system starts to unlearn its old choreography. The constant scanning, the emotional contortions, the need to fix. You start to realize that love isn't supposed to feel like surveillance. Boundaries are not walls. They're clarity. They're the invisible lines that keep love honest. Without them, even the purest empathy turns into overextension. The truth is, the people who truly love you don't need you to disappear for them. They don't need you to silence your feelings to protect theirs. Real love, grounded, mature love, doesn't ask for your self-abandonment as proof of loyalty. It asks for your honesty, your presence, your wholeness. The hard part is learning that you cannot save someone who is determined to stay in their pain. You can walk beside them, you can love them deeply, but you cannot bleed for them. Because when you constantly make yourself smaller to protect someone else's comfort, you teach them that your needs are negotiable, and slowly, without realizing it, you become the ghost in your own story, a supporting character in everyone else's healing, while yours remains untouched. It's not your fault. You were trained to believe that love meant responsibility, that other people's emotions were your job to manage. You were raised to mistake peacekeeping for worth, but you're not that child anymore. You no longer have to earn belonging by caretaking. You can choose relationships that feel reciprocal, not consuming. You can choose people who meet you where you are, not those who drain you for staying. And yes, sometimes healing means walking away from people you love. It means letting silence replace connection that once felt vital. It means grieving the version of you that thought love only existed through sacrifice. But what you gain is something far deeper: self-trust. The quiet knowing that your love has value even when it isn't poured into someone else. You begin to realize that empathy can coexist with boundaries, that love doesn't have to mean losing yourself, that your softness doesn't need to come with self-abandonment. And one day, you'll find yourself standing in the middle of your own life again, not as a reflection of someone else's needs, but as a whole person. You'll listen to music and feel something move inside you that isn't tied to anyone else's emotions. You'll breathe without the invisible weight of caretaking on your chest. You'll remember what it means to simply exist, to belong to yourself first. That's the quiet beauty of healing from codependency. It's not a loud revolution, it's a slow return to your own voice, your own body, your own rhythm. It's the realization that love is not measured by how much you give away, but by how much of yourself you allow to remain. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You just have to show up as yourself and trust that's enough.